Hey guys, it's Baileywiki, and we are looking at a giant scene. I'll show you the scale of it here in just a second. This is a city, it's at night, and we'll just zoom in here and you can see these rooftops and lights being included under them. And this is pretty huge. It's all made with tiles, and a lot of you wonder, how do you make these, right? So this is made with prefabs and tiles. These are mostly from my latest release. I'll show you some examples here, but just to zoom in and give you a sense of scale, this is the inside of a tavern. And if we drop our player in here, we can see just this one piece is, pretty big map. But when we zoom out, you can see it's a much larger one. And this is part of my set and my system for building cities. Here we're inside of this new church. You can see the old stonework, and these are all, again, new assets that you can play with as of this month. It's September 2023. But I'm going to show you how we built this, and we're going to build a scene using the same pieces. It'll be a different scene just to show you the breadth of what's available. But let's turn the lights on here real quick, and I just want to show you something else. Using Mass Edit and Tagger, see all these red roofs around the perimeter, right? So they drop in like that. But I have this control, and when you click it, it's very subtle, but you notice the roofs have changed colors. Cool, right? So I'm going to also show you how this works. These are available for free, these controls with my nuts and bolts free module. But you see they all turn to now brown and gray. And so it really changes the look of your city, and you can do it really, scene by scene. It's really awesome. So how we did the trees and everything else, I'm going to show you that today, because a lot of people don't realize how much map making you can actually do within Foundry. If you have prefabs and assets that are ready to go, it's pretty fun. Okay, so let's make a new test scene. We'll call it city, and I'm going to unlink the height and the width. I'm going to make everything with tiles here. Well, I don't know, maybe I'll make a background. I'm just getting a starting point. I'm saying 4,000 by 4,000 pixels. It's a 100 pixel grid. Let's just get this prepped here. I'm going to use one of the new settlement backgrounds. In this case, I want this, I think, to be, and by the way, these all get installed when you install my modules. So you install them from the Foundry directory after you're subscribed, and then it unlocks all of these, and it puts all of these tiles in your computer. And we're just navigating to these forest settlements. I decided I want to make this one like a forest settlement. And I've got these really flexible backgrounds that let me do that. I can use them for lots of different things. But when I click save, interestingly, you can see like the size of the squares on the right, and I'm going to try to adjust those. And I say interestingly because Foundry implemented this new thing, which let's try to change this to like a larger scene, like 5,000 pixels. And while we're here, let's do some other things. I like to change my backgrounds to black, find it to be more immersive. We'll turn on global illuminations, but set it to where the vision starts to block later. And then I wanted to turn off token elevation. And now when I go back in here, notice it changed the grid size to 125. I'm going to change it back to 100. I don't know why Foundry forces that. This is ever since the V11. I find it annoying. It's probably got some great use that I don't understand, but that's what it is. So now I wanted to drop in a token and just get a sense of scale for this. And I don't know, maybe this is actually too big. So let's go back in. Oh, not my token. Let's go back in and configure the city. And we'll go back to 3,500. And again, when I save it, I got to go back in and change that grid size back to 100. Don't know why that does it. Maybe you guys can explain in the comments if you understand the thinking behind it. But okay, now we're ready to look in prefab. So I'm in the compendiums. I'm looking up all the new prefab content. And check this out. I've got all these, what I call facades. You've seen facades from me before, but I just remastered all of them. They're super fun. They're colorable. They are using all like the latest. Remember, to import them, you just like drag it from the compendium into your sidebar now that Foundry supports just folders from compendium. You can see you have 1x, 2x, and 3x prefabs. And what they are is a bunch of roof tiles and walls and other things and awnings and other stuff to go with them, but it's all connected into a prefab. So you don't have to go through the headache of making them all work. They're not buildings that you can enter. That's why we call them facades. But you can just drop them in, rotate them around. And this is using Token Attacher. That's a module that makes prefabs work. And it just kind of has everything already built into it. So I'm just rotating with my mouse wheel. And I'm just looking at where these approximately go. Remember, if they exceed the edges of the visible scene, the players won't see it. So, it makes it nice that these roofs will look like tucked back into the sort of framing the scene. And let's pull up some other ones. These 2X's are just a little bit shorter, and they'll fit in other kinds of environments or other kinds of spaces. And remember, they are all colorable. And they're all one piece. The roofs themselves, the individual roofs are kind of one piece. So you'll see here in a second how well they color. And now I've got all these buildings. Of course, I've got like, I don't know, hundreds of buildings at this point. They all have the new roof style. So everything matches these days. And it's just so you can make cities and little city districts really quickly. And remember too, I have ways of like, you can apply damage to the roofs and you can apply snow to roofs, that sort of thing. But what we're doing is we're just looking at how these buildings might fit together, like relating to each other. This is a building you can enter. So I want front door to be accessible. And what's nice about the backgrounds is they scale up and down pretty well. There's nothing that says that background with those trees and that stonework has to be smaller or larger. I'm going to drag in some of these other little tiny rooms. I just want like this one sort of room to be accessible. Just to show you guys how this stuff works. Just figuring out where it might nestle into the facades a little bit. I'm going to turn on quick edit mode, and I'm just going to push that's a foreground tile. I'm just going to push it to the back so it goes behind the rest of my foreground tiles. And I don't know, let's add another bedroom. I plan on putting some NPCs and maybe some items. I might throw some blood into one of these when I actually play my game. Just little plot hooks or whatever I think is going to push my story along. And the facades, they give you all this like really cool detail, but without a lot of the cost, meaning they're not fully explorable buildings. So it keeps the map more lightweight, right? Less lights, less walls, less tiles, that kind of thing. And by the end here, I'm going to just talk about how you can optimize this too for gameplay. Let's pull in one of the towers. This is from the Prefabs 05 other sets. This tower is, I think, a 3 or 4 story tower, and it just comes with everything already done, right? It's levels enabled. It's got walls and windows that you can shoot out of, and you can go walk into the staircase and go up. It's really nice, but it's super tactical, and it's easy just to throw down into a scene. I do plan on having a battle happen here. That's why I wanted this big open space in the middle, rather than maybe a explorable scene or something like that. Here's the control. It's a prefab itself. It's with the new release. And I'll explain some of the pieces here in just a second. But if you click on them, like that first one uses every color in the rainbow. If you don't want every color in the rainbow because it's not natural, you can click on the Roy G. Biv, right, and just use standard colors. Or then you can change everything to, this kind of mottled, kind of somber grays and browns. You can also even change the awnings. Those awnings are separate tiles. You can delete them, move them around. You can change their colors as well. And then I even have this, we've had this for a while, but you can make all of the smoke animated if you like that. It's a lot of animation for one scene. So if you were going to do that, I would delete some of them. But you can just click the button again and it will use frozen tiles instead. So you can see we're just a couple minutes in and we've already got a pretty good scene, right? If we're prepping for our next game. I want to show you what this custom one does. It's just a tile. When you click on it, it's got monked active tiles. That's what makes it actually do something. But I used mass edit to actually make the macro. So if we look at here, if the GM clicks it, it'll play that sound file, that little chirping sound that you hear, and then it'll run that macro. You have to have my nuts and bolts module installed and active because it will go look in the compendium. Now, what I did was I right-clicked on the color there, and that lets you do randomization. I'm using, again, mass edit here. When you click that macro, it automatically opens up mass edit, and it's looking for those specific tags. But let's say I want everything to be in kind of a green color. So you can see the instructions there, but I'm going to double click and make these green, but it still gives me this weird, rainbow in the middle. So that's what these drop downs do. They give you other options. Here you go. So the RGB options will just create a linear progression between those two. Now it's set to randomize, click OK, and check it out. Really satisfying green roofed town, in the middle of the forest. And I love it. So I recommend you check those out. I recommend you get the premium version of mass edit if you want to make these changes. One thing I thought I'd show you too, really anything is colorable. You just have to tint it red first. So this is actually just a white tile, the roof of this particular tower. I tinted it red, and then I just selected my Dungeon Draft tint and I colored it like I would any other red tile. So a lot of people don't know that, but yeah, it really, kind of lets you apply that coloration anywhere. And that's looking pretty good. That flag, by the way, is animated if you want it to be. Just right-click it and play it. So let's add maybe a few more things just to kind of finish the scene. We'll add a statue here. Feel like maybe there's some kind of plot device involving a statue in the middle of the town square. I'm going to right-click it and go to Appearance, and I'm going to increase the width and height of the control token by 2, and that's going to 2x everything that's attached to it. So that's why this grew in size. And I'm going to show you how to get rid of these control tokens here in just a second, but I leave them there until I'm happy with the layout, because once you delete them, you can't get them back again. And I'm going to right-click this. This is macro wheel. You don't need it, but it lets me apply a lot of the overlay effects. I wanted the statue to look like really tarnished and dingy. Maybe that's part of the plot of what the players are going to discover here. And of course, it didn't need to be a statue. It could have been a dead tree. It could have been lots and lots of different things. I have lots of plot hooks and things like that. But you can also use things from like Tom Kartos. Tom Kartos has some of the coolest tiles for plot hooks, right? By the way, I decided here I want to put an inn in here. Maybe I want the players to actually start in a little inn, and then maybe a battle spills out in the town square here. You can see I've got that colorable roof. All the roofs are tagged in a specific way. That's how that control knows how to find a roof and recolor it. So I recommend you open these up, open up the test scenes, open up the release scenes that I sent out with this release, and just check out how I coded all of these things with, their different tags and Monk's active tiles and things like that. In case you're curious, in case you want to make these things yourself. And I'm just going to select that roof. I'm going to color it some kind of green like the other ones. All right, looking good. And you can see the explorable buildings they include for you. They would not for players. The players, as they're walking around, which we'll test here, we'll just see roofs. And let's add some audio. So I've got a bunch of ambient audio and sound files in my towns module. We'll go there now, and we'll grab the medieval town loop. And let's decrease the volume. Let's have it go ahead and stay constrained by walls, but we'll get rid of the volume easing. So it's a nice, standard sound. And then we'll make it shut off at night because we don't want the bustle of the city. I'm gonna make a copy of that, and then we're gonna go right back in there and change the copy to crickets chirping. I happen to know that this is a relatively quiet file, so I'm going to increase the volume here. You want to be careful, make sure you test this. You don't want to get really loud for your players. And we want this to turn on at night versus during the daytime. Otherwise, we'll keep everything the same. All right, so now we've got these like two ambient sounds that sort of switch off from one to the other as we change this. And then you don't actually have to do this, but I plan on having weather with FX Master. So I'm just going to draw a drawing over my explorable buildings. I'm going to right click it. I'm going to press that cloud. I'm going to hide it. Now that drawing is invisible to users, but by clicking on that little cloud icon, it makes it so that you don't see weather when you're in the building. And I'll do that for the rest of my buildings, which I just skipped by for you guys. I'm going to click this one, token attacher, delete all control tokens. You notice all the control tokens just deleted. Now everything is fixed in its place. You can still change it, walls, move things around, but you can't move them as easily as you could just dragging a control token. Let's go ahead and test it. We can hear our background noise or hammering. Players are walking through the middle here. Might end up adding some vendor stalls and things like that over time. We'll test this out. Okay, just found a little bug here with this tower that that base should be underneath the top base. And by the way, we're just going to open up levels here so we can automatically pull in all the levels that these prefabs have created. And now I'm just going to get to my background layer and I'm going to right click that and I'm going to send it to the back. Now my base is underneath the base of the tower, which is where it should be. I'm going to walk onto that ladder and I get access to all of my different levels that I can go up and down to. And I'm at the top, I can shoot out of these windows, or I can have a NPC shooting from those windows at my players. And, you know, there's a lot of time it takes to set up a tower like this, but to be able to have it just kind of out of the box is sort of the goal here. Got a lot of different cool egress points into my town. I've got my nice little tavern where I can start my players in or have them end up here for some reason. You're hearing some of the new ambient door sounds from the new Foundry, by the way. It's got ambient doors built into it. It's like not all of them are triggering it. But pretty good. Let's make this statue do something. So when anyone clicks it, and we'll select some of these options here, even if the game is paused, I want them to see what's on here. And we'll change the switch tile image action to something else. I was thinking of sending a notification, but I want to show you scrolling text really quick. It's really cool. So let's give it some kind of thing that the plaque says, right? We'll do in memoriam of Saint Victor. And then normally it would make this text show up over the player, but we're going to use tagger and we're going to say, I want it to apply to the tag statue. And we'll update it and then we'll go back and give this the same tile the tag of statue. Add that tag there, click update. And now when our player clicks the statue, the scrolling text shows up over the tile and not the player. Cool, right? I think it's a really slick way of doing little things of notice without having to, open up whole journal entries and things like that. Let's drop our lights. You notice they come on randomly. That's part of how these things are coded, is to give it that kind of organic randomization. But this is looking nice. Everything's occluded properly. This is a really great mood. You can hear the crickets in the background. I love it. And with this release, as usual, you get a ton of these sites or these scenes already made, and you can come in here and just make changes, right? Just add a streetlight wherever you want to, or come in and add some wagons or vendor stalls or gallows or whatever is going to tell the story for your town. But that is getting pretty close. I realize this is a forest town, so maybe we should put in some more trees. I have trees in the nature prefabs. I've got tree lines, which I'm using here. They're super efficient because they cover a lot more space than one tree. And I want to just kind of frame this, this scene in some trees. So I'm grabbing the 1x tree lines. The 2x tree lines are huge, meant for larger scenes than this. They'd probably overwhelm the scene. So I went with the 1x sizes. I'm just going to grab their control tokens like you saw me do before, and I'm just going to kind of nestle them around the edges so that, players can see them. But the reason I put in trees afterwards at the end of everything is token attacher will automatically put overhead tiles or background tiles on top of other tiles that are on their levels. So it's smart enough to put trees on top of the the roofs if you do the trees last. And you can see the effect it gives us is we have this nice little, these buildings with trees kind of encroaching over the tops of them, and it's pretty effective for making us believe this is this town. And then you get some of the other effects like the old stonework and things like that are in the background. It just helps you create detail density without the effort. That's what these test backgrounds exist for. We'll get rid of the rest of our prefabs, and now everything's baked in. And I think I'm pretty happy with this. Now, I'm just showing you all the different tiles that are on these levels. The background level doesn't have so many tiles. It's got a few. But then there's quite a few tiles on the foreground level. And you can certainly play this map as it is. If you want to optimize it, you can grab all of your tiles and you can actually make them like a single tile. I don't recommend doing that the way I'm doing it here. I would grab just the ones that you want to include, use just selected tiles, and you can make, like, for example, all the trees and stuff around the edges just freeze in place. And what's cool is this is Media Optimizer by Ripper, by the way. It is premium. But what's cool is it'll actually freeze and save the colors that you added and just bake those into the image. It's really nice. But then you can make other scenes like this using the same technique that I just showed you guys, as well as the one that we opened up with, where, I've got this one set up to do a bunch of different quests around these kind of four corners of this area or of the city. So you can really build far and far and far into, like, you can have whole cities with things like this. So I recommend you come in and play with it. Use some of the tools. Ask me in the comments if you want me to do any specific tutorials on, like, creating macros with mass edit or, more stuff on randomization. But thanks for joining me, and have fun making your maps.